All right, hello, everyone. Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. Alex Holtz now, pleased to be joined by not one, but two guests, both very big friends of the show, and that's Fordham Director of Athletics Ed Kull and the founder of Collectible xChange, Brandon Steiner. We're here to talk about a really exciting project as Fordham partners with Collectible xChange to get some memorabilia from the historic Rose Hill Gym. So, Ed, Brandon, thanks so much for being here. We're looking forward to this.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
So I want to start with just the simple question of, obviously, we were talking a little before the call. You two obviously know each other pretty well, and I'm curious who went to who to kind of start this and to get the Rose Hill Gym as part of Collectible xChange's offerings.
Boy, that's a good question. I always follow Ed on LinkedIn because, to me, when you talk about Fordham Athletics, that's Westchester, New York. It's part of you talk about history, nostalgia. So I'm a fan. I always follow Fordham Athletics, and Ed does a good job at keep me in the loop through LinkedIn. Actually, I get all the bits and pieces, and I think it was John Cirillo who mentioned something about the court. Maybe that would have been the initiator of it. But I'm very familiar with Rose Hall, and you have to be because it's an amazing building. We're not talking about just any building. It's an amazing building. It's got the length of time, the history. It's kind of old school. I wish there were more arenas around the country more like that didn't, all of a sudden jump into these new high-tech buildings, because there's something about going to Rose Hall and feeling that old, that old vibe, that feeling of, history and nostalgia.
So Alex, first and foremost, Brandon is the model of what sports business is, sports memorabilia, sports collectibles is. Everybody knows Steiner Sports, the history of that company, what he started and created. The collectible business, the memorabilia business is nothing without Brandon Steiner. And so he's the pioneer in this. So for me, it was easy in terms of identifying who to go to, who to ask questions, who to get advice and guidance on marketing our program for. And as you know, Alex, 2 years ago, we did a full renovation of the Rose Hill Gymnasium, the Rose Hill court, the Rose Hill bleachers, everything in terms of our facility. And because of my understanding and knowledge and following of Brandon throughout these years, I'm like, we have to keep the old floor. We got to hold that old floor. Let's store it, put it in storage somewhere. And obviously, when the time was right, via the pandemic, we obviously had to navigate COVID a little bit together. Johnny Cirillo, who's a mutual friend and a Fordham alum of Brandon and I, he's like, of course it's Brandon. Let's give him a call. What do we do with this floor? How do we do it right? But I'll be honest with you, Alex, it's not just business and making money. For me, it was a matter of how do we get our Fordham brand out there? How do we celebrate our Fordham history? How do we celebrate the Rose Hill campus and what it means to so many people, and the Rose Hill court, so many players play on it? How do we really promote Fordham University in our athletic department? And this is just another opportunity of doing that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Professor Cirillo because he's actually a teacher of mine, and I saw this press release before even doing this interview and knew about this. So I thought it was really cool how this all came kind of full circle here. But my question for you, Brandon, I'm so curious about is like sports memorabilia is one thing, but then this piece of a sports arena or a court is like another thing. I'm curious, what does kind of the market for that really look like, and what was it about the Rose Hill Gym that kind of interested you and to get kind of a piece of that court and offer it in a few different ways here?
I think what happens, and everybody always wants what's new, and you're always pushed. There's a lot of pressure on guys like, there's a lot of pressure on Ed. What's new? What else are we building? How are we upgrading? And I'm a fan of that to some degree, but only if you respect what's happened in the past. Like, you don't just get a Rose Hall by snapping your fingers. Like, when I took down the old Yankee Stadium, one of the things I told the management at the Yankees, like, I know you got the new stadium, all the hype, but let's respect the many, many years of this old stadium. And that's why I look at Rose Hall, the same thing, like the nostalgia of a university that's had the history that Fordham has had. Listen, academics has been amazing at Fordham, so a lot more gets talked about academics when you have such a great school like that. But, the athletics are real. There's a lot of history there. And I never, ever, at least I try not to let somebody like Ed run away with his next plan, which is his job, without respecting, kind of the past and putting that to bed the right way. Because for old guys like me, I've been to Rose Hall. I watched games there. People that went to Iona, they love that, and I want them to have a little piece of that memory. Memorabilia is just a memory. It's a moment, and when you went to if you went to Fordham, you've got that memory. You have that one game you went to. game-winning shot. There's been some great players that have played there. So, I'm a little bit of a keeper. I'm a little bit of a saver. I kind of get caught up in it. But I think a lot of us do. Like, why not? It's all good. So I like the fact that they're upgrading Rose Hall. And I guess that's what you do with all these different arenas. But when you have something special like Rose Hall, like, you got to make sure that you keep some of those things in perspective. And if I could put a little piece of that Rose Hall gym in as many alumni's houses, offices, hey, and they walk in, they remember the good old days when they went to school and, on a Friday night game and that sort of thing. So we put a whole product line together, and there'll be several phases like this because of some supply chain issues. It'll take a little while to put out some, the tables, cufflinks, pens, bottle openers, and all that stuff we'll do, which will be fun. And then for now, we found some really cool photos that the athletic department was able to help us with, and we'll frame some stuff up, and there'll be more and more coming.
And that was my question too, Ed, to kind of follow on that is, a lot of these, the memorabilia is not just about the court, but also showing photos of Digger Phelps, Charlie Y, and all these, historic elements of, as you can see here, Brandon showing us. And I'm curious, Ed, what kind of made that part of it, working with the athletics department, getting the history of Fordham also a part of this as well? Why was that kind of an important part of this?
It's so important. Yeah, it's so important, Alex, as we really want to be able to not only look back and celebrate those moments and memories. Every alum we speak to, every fan that comes to games today, Alex, speaks to us about their memories of coming to the Rose Hill Gymnasium, that Rose Hill moment of whether it was 1970, 71 with Digger Phelps and Charlie Y and Kenny Charles and that nationally ranked team, or the championships. Brandon just showed you a photo. That was actually women's basketball. It was Coach Gately and the Atlantic 10 championship from 2014. There's a lot of memories there, and I think Brandon and what Brandon does and his company does is they're so great at understanding and touching on the heartstrings and the affinity, and that's what all college athletics is about, right? Is the affinity, the love, the memories, the experience. Look, this wasn't even staged. Up in my office, you see a Steiner piece there of obviously the 4 or 5 greatest catchers of all time. I was a catcher, so I love that. And that's what Brandon does. And that's why it was a natural partnership, a natural synergy to get him involved in terms of how do we go about touching the heartstrings, not only celebrating the history and the memories, but also trying to re-engage, Alex. We want fans back. We want fans to pack the gym. We want current students to pack the gym, create that incredible collegiate feel and home court advantage, and continue to engage folks. So it's touching on the memories and the affinity, but it's also re-engaging them. Kind of, hey, new day, new situation, new basketball, men's coach, a tremendously successful women's basketball coach. Come back to the gymnasium, enjoy the memories, but also create new memories with us as we try to obviously, build on a new environment, new culture, a new brand here for Fordham Athletics.
Well, that's something I'm curious about too, as we've mentioned a little bit here. There's other steps that I feel like this could go down as well. Is there other pieces of memorabilia that we think Fordham could have an interesting, piece for? Maybe it's something of Jack Coffey Field. Maybe it's something of Bohoshi Field. Is this something, Ed, or even Brandon, you have considered kind of pushing this an avenue further and showing off other parts of Fordham's history?
I would love to hear Brandon's thoughts on how he even goes about thinking about those things. Between Yankee Stadium and Shea Stadium, I'm a Mets fan, Brandon. You've identified items and objects that nobody would even thought about at that period of time.
And, we could get into the field too. I mean, there's a lot of history there too, but when we replace that field at some point, you'll need to do that. We'll cut that up too. And those make great, for carpet in your basement, great doormats, car mats. I sold millions of dollars of grass legally. We take the grass, we freeze dry it. There's something special about the dirt, even on some of these fields. So, listen, Fordham football, I mean, we could probably do an hour just on that. I mean, that's amazing. So, there's a lot of cool stuff that's gone on in the history of Fordham athletics, and all the grains of sand count as what equals the beach. So when I think of these ideas, I just think of something I like, something I'd like to have in my office. So yeah, I do think about those things. And with the NIL thing popping up, which is probably why Ed doesn't have any more hair left on his head, because that's a whole nother thing that you got to look at. And there are, potential, when you start winning 8-10 championships, you go undefeated, different things happen along the way. Now we can get the students to participate too, legally, completely upfront, through the rules. And now the kids can make some money on some of this as well. And that's kind of a little bit, way ahead. And the next phase of this is when you start looking at because a lot of the stuff that the student athletes play with, and I'm talking about all the sports, you really can't buy in the store. So, there's a lot of women that are playing volleyball, softball, some of the sports that Fordham has, you can't get that stuff. So eventually we'll partner up with the school, the athletes, and we'll be able to sell that stuff so that young girls that live in Westchester that look up to Fordham Athletics can wear that stuff and use that stuff. And it is hard to get the actual game used stuff, uniforms, balls, and things like that, because they're specially made just for colleges and just for the collegiate use. And that by selling that through, it helps the school, helps the kids, and gets the alumni and the fans what they want.
And then I'll also say too, obviously we talk about future partnerships, and I'm curious, Ed, we talk about why this is such the right time for something like this with the Rosefield Gym. So can you just talk about the Fordham basketball season in general, why you thought this was a good time to kind of look back on the history, but also, as you kind of mentioned, look towards the future as well with what Kyle Neptune's building this season?
Yeah, Alex, I think, it's especially during the pandemic, and I don't want to speak for Brandon and his industry. I think you see a lot of talk about the craze of trading cards and collectibles almost really getting even that much more exciting and getting that much more publicity out there and breaking auction prices. I think a lot of that ties to folks kind of having a different perspective on life, Alex, right? We all had challenges differently on the pandemic and COVID, and perspective and the ideas of what's important in our life and family and loved ones and the memories. And I think for a lot of folks, which is what Brandon talks about and what he sells, is those memories are so important. That nostalgia is so important. And that's something I want to continue to leverage and tie on for our Fordham community, is those memories, whether it's on your desk, whether it's on your bookshelf, whether it's on your wall, whether it hangs in your closet, that Fordham is always a part of your life, and that we're able to remind them, touch them in a loving way, and continue to connect with them as much as possible. It's another reminder. And I think it's just the right time. Of course, I'm a new athletic director at Fordham University. Brandon talked about business planning and revenue generation. That's important. But the ability to really promote our brand externally and get out there and to live in existence in people's homes and their offices and their basements, etc., all the places where these objects live is an exciting opportunity for us. Not just a matter of celebrating history or a certain player or coach, but reminding them of obviously that how much Fordham means to them and how much we're there for them, and that the Rams are a part of their lives forever.
You can learn more about that at Collectible Exchange or FordhamSports.com. There's a whole lot of offerings, whether it's the decal on the court or a piece of the court or some memorabilia with photos as well. And Brandon, just kind of wrap us up. You want to tell us a little bit more about Collectible Exchange, maybe what else you have going on outside of the Rosefield Gym, and what else people can find there that's on the market right now?
Well, the one thing I just want to, first of all, Ed, thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it. And, I think the best way to move forward always is to have gratitude for the past. And it's important. I wish that more teams and buildings would do that, because if you just move automatically on to the future, you give no love to the past. I think there's a gap there, and there's no need for it. And that's not what we're doing here. So for all the Fordham alums, thank you. And hopefully you'll call us and pick up a piece. A lot of the money is going to help Fordham Athletics. So please, pick up a piece. Collectible Exchange is great because we have 125,000 items. It's a real marketplace now where you can buy and sell. And I'll just say that one of our big emphasis is on women in sports. So that we have a whole group of collective women that have never done collectibles before. Very disruptive. Sue Bird, Tarasi, Mega Rapone, Mia Hamm, Mega Rapino, Kleiman, Ross, from volleyball, softball. So we're really trying to put a lot of emphasis on women in collectibles. But yeah, we have Mariano and Messier and all the big names too. But I really want to do something a little different, and which is why I love the Fordham idea. I just love, because everybody's always looking at the Michigans and all the big schools, athletic schools. But Fordham's a big school in its own right, and it's a little different. And especially when you get a Rose Hall, it's extremely unique. So that's kind of where my head's at, more unique, more different, more nostalgic, more authentic off nostalgia. And Collectible Exchange is my new creation. It's kind of a bunch of the things I was thinking about for a bunch of years. And now I'm kind of more free to do these kinds of projects.
Definitely. So you can learn more at collectibleexchange.com. And Ed, you want to add one more thing here before we wrap up?
I appreciate it, Alex. Thank you so much for your time. And Brandon, the pleasure's all ours in terms of our partnership, our relationship here. I know it goes back a lot of years. Excited to work with you. As I said, the premier brand in all of sports entertainment, sports memorabilia, sports marketing is Brandon Steiner. It's an honor. And I know, Brandon, as a kid, you really wanted to go to Fordham University very badly. And I know that was always your goal. And unfortunately, I know you weren't able to get in and you had to settle for your safety school at Syracuse. And Syracuse may not have been the best education for you, but you are obviously the pioneer and the premier sports marketer. And I'm thrilled to have you here. And I promise we'll work on an honorary doctorate for you here at Fordham.
I look forward to that. And you're absolutely right. There's no way I was getting into Fordham. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to hide from that comment. You know, academically, I struggled, man. It was a struggle. But now I got a little smarter. So maybe I can make a comeback and still get that doctorate.
Alex, I would just add Collectible Exchange is as authentic, is the authenticity, the strongest brand in all of sports memorabilia. When you're worried about making sure it's authentic and it's real and it's safe and it's preserved, Brandon is it. So it's a one-stop shop. Everybody should be going there for all their needs, especially this holiday season.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you, man. Have a great day, man. And I look forward to getting to Rose Hall. Catching the game.
Sunday, Michigan State. Big game. Perfect time for
Rams. Go Rams.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. All right, we'll be right back on one-on-one right after this. You want to learn more? CollectibleExchange.com or come see a game in the Rosefield Gym or catch the court online. Thanks, everyone.